Helga Dune by Michael Lieber, narrated by Peter Walters. Chapter 1. The Funeral. In the middle of the English countryside, in the depths of autumn, there was a little town called Ducklington. It was raining, and the dark roofs of the little line houses dripped in the gloom, and the rooms within were empty. But why? Where were the townfolk? They were as one, moving in a clustered rabble, all dressed in black with black umbrellas, trudging through the graveyard that resided down the sliding hill, their bowed heads weary as they tried not to slip in the slop, for the ground was saturated. Bearing a woeful weight, 8 burly bearers carried a wide coffin that was far wider than most coffins. Their coal-black boots shuffled along the muddy ground, huffing closer to a gaping grave. Their faces twisted in pain, as one said to another, "Christ, she's heavy! My arm's gone numb," said the one in the middle. "Starboard! Starboard!" said the back. Despite the multitude of muscle, the 8 buckled under the immense weight of the coffin, causing it to crash away from their gated grasps as it slid down the hill and into the open grave with a tremendous upsplash of wet mud and a wave of worried whimpers. A small, ugly man of 25, with a thin pencil moustache, pushed his way to the front and fell to his knees in a flood of tears. "Gentle with her, please," cried the little man. The long white ripple of the vicar's garb whooshed by him, proclaiming a dominant stance at the foot of the grave. "Helga Dune will be missed in this life," projected the vicar in a stern and sully voice, while adjusting his purple tippet. "Only 38. Her passing was an accident that should serve as a great example to us all. She was, to many, a pillar of our community, the respected landlady of the Pig and Truffle pub. She was a caring mother figure to many, although she never had children. She was an excellent darts player, and was for a time the captain of the Ducklington women's darts team, the name of which I will not utter here today, for it is inappropriate in my view." "Do you mean the Ducklington Bottoms?" said a shrill voice near the back. This remark caused a slight titter among the mourners, which dismayed the little man greatly. "How can you laugh at a time like this, you heartless hoves, you hoves?" The vicar boomed even louder to beat the various sounds that chimed all round. "Now then, in the spirit of our Lord, that we may reflect, that we may heal, we encourage Helga Dune's nearest and dearest to say a few words. I have been informed that Helga's sister has travelled down from London, but has refused to give a eulogy, unless, perhaps, she has changed her mind." The vicar then looked over at a moody middle-aged Londoner standing with her arms folded. "Just get on with it," said the sister impatiently. The vicar flurried his gown indignantly. "Very well. In lieu of this, we shall hear from the Ducklington women's darts team." A small gang of bolshy women walked to the speaking point. "We'll keep it short. She would have wanted it that way," said the current captain. "She was a good thrower, never went over the line. Good strong arm, and when the heat was on, you could always count on her to hit a double 20. Thank you." And with that, the women awkwardly left the grave and slinked back into the crowd. The vicar disdained. "Next, Helga's most loyal customer, who has been frequenting the Pig and Truffle pub from the very first day it opened." An elderly man hobbled forward. His face was limp on one side, presumably from a stroke. "I like telling top lady." "Helga," whispered the vicar, correcting him. The old man licked his old smacking lips and continued, "Yes, Helga, top lady. She knew how to pour a pint, knew how to angle the glass. Yes, top she was. I remember she had those sour cream and chive scampi bits in once. That blue packet, no one liked them, but I liked them. And I said to her, I quite like them. But then she ran out, and I said to her, oh, shame, I quite like them. And then a month later, it was my birthday, my 82nd, and she had ordered 'em back in, and I said, why did you order them back in? Nobody likes them. And she said, because I know you like them, and I knew it was your birthday. So I thought that was quite nice of her. Anyway, rest in peace, Ellen." The stern vicar rolled his eyes. "And lastly, we have the Pig and Truffles bar manager, and as most of you will know, for it was common knowledge in the town, this aforementioned manager was living romantically with Miss Dune above the pub, and out of wedlock. And as I do not acknowledge any such title to the effect of partner, significant other, or any other false union, he will be introduced in the eyes of God merely as Miss Dune's friend. Come forth, Egbert Wells, friend of Helga Dune." The little man walked teary-eyed and zombified beside the vicar and began to read a poem from a soggy piece of paper, and all the while his little moustache twitched like a dying caterpillar. "When my light was low, you were my candle. When my warmth was gone, you were my heat. When my—" "Speak up, Mr. Wells, they can't hear you," said the vicar abruptly. I will start again," said Egbert, abandoning his disintegrating poem. "Hello, everyone. Thank you, all of you, for coming and being here on this day. I feel strange. My Helga is gone. She was alive 1 minute, and then she wasn't, and it doesn't feel real. I feel like she is going to walk up to me at any moment. I arranged this funeral, and now I'm here, and I'm... As Egbert went to speak again, it began to rain even louder, causing the bed of black umbrellas to spring closer together like morbid flowers. "I think we'd better close proceedings, given the climate," said the vicar. "I commit her body to earth, that her soul may rest, that God will take her by the hand and guide her, and may we remember her fondly on this day. Amen." "Amen." Now, I'm sure you are all eager for the wake that awaits. It will be held at the Pig and Truffle. Let us venture towards it, that we may reflect and rejoice the life of Helga Dune, and as I understand it, there is a tab behind the bar, so free drinks for all. Is that still the case?" The vicar looked down at Egbert, who nodded with a sad sniff. Upon the prospect of a free drink, the townfolk quickly dispersed, with some even running with glee up the muddy hill to the pub. The vicar stayed only long enough to winkle a divot of wet dog dropping out from his shoe before leaving Egbert alone by the grave. Looking like a drowned poet with a black tie and a black sky, and all about him miserable grey, he produced a cheap wedding ring from his pocket. "It was for you. I was going to propose, my love. Oh, what a wicked and cruel world it is. You were my life. You knew me better than anyone." And with a final blub, he tossed the wedding ring into the gaping grave. Yum, yum, thought the grave. As he began to slug his gloomy self back up the muddy slope, taking great care not to slip, he found himself drawing ever nearer to a grizzled grave-digger standing under a tree, waiting to fill in the grave. He was a peculiar figure, with an eye patch as black as night, and a shock of dirty red hair, and wearing an equally red and dirty neckerchief. The gravedigger did not speak, but simply gave a small, respectful nod, and Egbert, in his unhappiness, could only bring himself to say one thing as he passed. "So cruel, so wicked, better than anyone. Chapter 2. A Wake for Helga. The rain finally stopped just as Egbert reached the cheery double doors of the Pig and Truffle pub. It was packed full of people, laughing and snorting and sloshing their drinks about. His funeral suit was sopping wet and dripped along the beer-stained carpet as he pushed through a tight mob of locals. "You'll get your drinks out of the way. Ouch, my foot!" And being short as he was, many did not notice him and said things in confidence. "I'm not surprised she died, given her size." "Oh, yes, I agree. They looked ridiculous together, didn't they? Like a chess pawn standing next to a bowling ball. And she was so much older than him. It's not right a woman of that age fooling around with a younger man. I heard he used to call her mummy in the bedroom. I heard she committed suicide. I heard she suffocated in her sleep from the weight of her own bosom." "Nonsense! I know the scoop. The doctor told me everything. Come close and I'll tell you. She was trying on her mother's old wedding dress and it was so tight she couldn't breathe. So she ran for help and accidentally tripped down the stairs and tumbled down and out. No, yes. What a way to go. If I ever get that big, do you promise to shoot me?" Upon reaching the busy bar with his fingers in his ears, Egbert ducked under the staff door and was knocked over by a fast barmaid trying to keep up with the endless orders. "Sorry, sir, we're understaffed. Gabby's gone home because someone called her a tart." Egbert jumped to quench his squelchy Cuban shoes and threw his short arms up in the air. "Oh, for heaven's sake! She's too sensitive, that girl. She needs to grow up." Taking off his damp jacket with a dead look in his tired eyes, he rolled up his sleeves and began to serve the smiling customers. It was a wall of faces. All right, one at a time, and it's one free drink, not free drinks." "2 pints, Egbert." "Salted peanuts, not those ones, the other ones. 2 glasses of dry white, 1 glass of red, 2 pints of bitter, and, another glass of white. These are free, right?" On and on this went, with the wall showing no sign of subsiding. As soon as one part fell away, it was quickly filled in with even more eager faces, clicking and waving like a many-headed monster. "Cider's out," said the barman, watching the draught hiss dry. Egbert opened the cellar door in the floor behind him, and was just about to descend into an underground world of metal barrels and tubing, when an East London accent tweaked his ugly ears. "Oi, Egbert, you remember me, don't you? Helga's sister." Feeling flat and forlorn, he turned to the gum-chewing woman leaning on the bar. Her eyes were very dark, and she was wearing a garish pair of hooped earrings. "Yes, I remember. It's Bianca, isn't it?" She squinted aggressively. "Yeah, that's right. I've been told you're mentioned in Helga's will. It boggles my bonce. Why, I mean, you're not family, are you? But since you are, listen up. The paperwork needs doing. So be at the solicitor's office tomorrow at 9 a.m. Me and Graham want to set off early. That's my husband." Graham. Responding to his "Here, Graham!" Responding to his name, a large, dumb brute of a man with a muscular forehead pushed his way through the locals to stand beside her. "We won't put up with it, will we, Graham?" "Nah," grunted the husband, looking slightly lobotomized. "So be there on time, or you and me are going to have an argy-bargy." And with one last venomous side-eye, the couple bullied their way out of the pub, leaving a sensitive Egbert feeling shaken behind the bar. Slowly, he returned to his barman duties, pouring out wine for a waif of wives, and felt numb and hollowed out, and was in no condition to be working. But then, amidst his woe, a second voice called out to him, but this time it was not angry or sharp, but rather excited and breathy. "Well done, Eggy!" It was an old gypsy woman peering over the bar and wearing a multitude of colourful cloths that worked in stark contrast to the rest of the wake. "You said you couldn't give a eulogy. You said you were too scared, but I checked your horoscope this morning and it said that strength was rising with Saturn, and sure enough you beat against the tide and stood up there in front of all those people and spoke from the heart. I got chills. It was nothing to do with the weather. It was you, Eggy. You were mesmerising. Up there, you reminded me of a young Dylan Thomas." Egbert smiled sleepily. "Thanks, Aunt Polly. What can I get you?" "Just a shandy, dear. I overheard your conversation with Helga's sister. By the way, she sounded like a right witch, and not in a good way. They're not all like that in London, you know. When I lived there in my youth, I met such marvellous people. I still write to one of them, Madam Boldley in Cockfosters. She's a fortune-teller, among other things. I'll remember once—" She was then cut off mid-sentence by leaning lad. "Wrap it up, Polly. Some of us are trying to get served." Aunt Polly plopped her purse on the bar. "Can't you see I'm talking to my nephew? Now, you be patient, or I'll tell your dear mother I saw you smoking weed behind the chippy." Hearing this, the lad slinked away in a worried wilt. The wake went on from there. The wine flowed, the beer gushed, and the whisky was sipped respectively. "Will it never end?" thought Egbert, but however exhausted he felt, he knew it was a far better state than what was to come, when he was alone, and close to midnight he was alone. One by one they all left, hugging and cooing each other, and between Egbert and the young barmaid, the decision was made to leave the pig in filth, at least for the night. "We'll clean up in the morning." Bar lights off. Click. "I don't want to go up there, but the bed's up there and I'm tired." "I'm so tired," said Egbert, making his way to the stairs. The stairs where it happened. Each wooden step creaked, leading up to the flat that was full of Helga's belongings. He chose to remain in darkness for fear of seeing something: her hairbrush, her ugly purple slippers, her celebrity magazines, the knitting she had started 6 months ago and hadn't touched since, her foot powder, her expensive candles with their exotic scent of cookies and cream. Breathing carefully, he made his way into the bedroom in one piece, but then, alas, his arms brushed past her extra large dressing gown that hung on the door. His lips began to tremble as he crawled onto his side of the bed without undressing or even brushing his teeth. It didn't seem to matter any more. And with the framed moon casting shadows over the room, he began to cry, and when the tears stopped, but for a moment, he rolled over and tumbled down into a gigantic indentation in the mattress, and as he finally reached its middle, its warmth, its space where she was, He closed his sore, tired eyes and slowly fell asleep in misery. Chapter 3. Cemetery. Upon the strike of midnight, the weather was calm for the moment. The rain was at rest, but the wind was still awake, albeit not as wild as it once was, a mere breeze braying through the graveyard. The grizzled gravedigger stood astride in the moonlight, adjusting his uncomfortable eye patch before shovelling the last spade of earth on the grave of Helga Dune. I'm content with that, as far as one can be contented. He spoke with a soft Irish lilt that sounded very pretty to the ear. Spearing his shovel in the damp, wormy soil, he turned away from the grave to light an old cork pipe. All of a sudden, the air turned brash, the ground began to shake, the cork pipe refused the light as the ghost of a woman wearing a torn wedding dress rose from the freshly filled grave with a tremendous operatic howl that wisped and wibbled in the wind, her essence green and vague as she descended down onto her own tombstone. The gravedigger turned back, his red neckerchief waving in the breeze, only to smile at the rotund ghost bride floating before him. "Evening, Miss Dune." "Hell's bells, creams and mustard, who the hell are you?" roared Helga with her many chins. "The name's Beetlebart, ma'am. I suspect you're a wee disturbed." Beetlebart began a second attempt at lighting his pipe. "Disturbed? I'm positively shittings." "Calm there now. I'll explain all that is." Corkpipe lit. Puff, puff. "It's like this, you see. Brace yourself. You're dead, Miss Dune. It's a sad fact, no doubt, but it happens to us all. But not all end up here, and by here I mean talking to me. You have unfinished business, Helga Dune. That's why you see me. That's why you see it all around you still. Now, Lord knows I try and help where I can, but you need to resolve your own earthly qualms, or you remain here forever." Helga looked to the horizon. It was night time, she knew that much at least. "And where is here exactly?" "All about you is the place between places, the deep crevasse in a glacier, the spine of a book, the crack of one's buttocks. For many they do not wait long. I'll give you a wee example. A dear old lass named Granny Ann left last Tuesday. It was a simple matter of her slow cooker being turned on at the wall. Once her body was discovered and the cooker was turned off, she floated up and away. But as I say, for less fortunate souls, unfinished business can be slightly more irksome." Beetlebart then eyed her tattered wedding dress, a gaze that did not go unnoticed by Helga. "Now, you listen here, you filthy shovel monkey." She jumped down off her tombstone looking very distraught. "I'm usually really nice, but if you don't start talking sense, you're going to get a slap. Miss Dune, calm yourself." "1. It's not advised, ma'am." 2. 2.5. "Right, I warned you." Helga raised a slapping hand and sent it hurtling towards Beetlebart, which, to her surprise, simply passed through. This sent her into a fit of anguish as she kicked and punched for a good long while before falling into a ghostly heap on the ground. "Oh, Lord, I really am dead. I'm dead and stuck alone in a graveyard with a creepy ginger Irishman." "Oh, we're not alone, Miss Dune. Nothing of the sort. Look about you, why don't you? Doing as she was asked, her mouth fell open, her ghostly eyebrows raised, for the graveyard was in fact full of unfulfilled spirits, just like her, and looked something close to a school fete or field fair, with hundreds of souls milling amongst the grassy gravestones. The mood was varied from ghost to ghost, and to Helga's once mortal gaze it struck a morbid note within her, for there were children running around as well as whole families squabbling around their family plots, and rich old ladies sitting high and lonely on their expensive tombs. Helga shot a glance over a Beetlebart. "Why do you look different?" Beetlebart smiled gently back at her. His teeth were rotten and yellow. "Ah, that's a fair observation if ever I heard one, and with a very simple answer. I, Beetlebart, am not dead, but as I say, I see you now, together with all the rest, and as I said, help where I can. Something of a tour guide. So take a wander, why don't you, Miss Dune? Make a friend or two, because you may be here for some time." She looked to her tombstone, the plain lettering, Helga Dune, sadly missed, a grim and disturbing spectre. She turned back, flustered. "But how do I—" But Beetlebart was gone. Lost and upset, Helga walked wide and rotund among the mounds, unintentionally catching the eye of an old lady in a tracksuit doing lunges, who promptly waved at her as she passed. In the middle distance she could make out a small crowd gathered around a central point. Upon joining, she caught a glimpse of what was entertaining them. It was the young soul of a chimney-sweep, standing with a smile on his gravestone and telling limericks with great charisma. "There was an old man who lived by the trees, who ate some red berries by the buzzing of bees. Acting so quick, they made him so sick, and he died there alone on his knees." Together with this, he made dramatic gestures with his chimney-brush, commanding cheers and joyous laughter from the crowd. To Helga's passing peep, his weathered stone read simply, "Little Chip, who got stuck up a chimney, 1855 to 1862. Then, to her horror, she heard a muffled voice coming from the ground beneath her feet. "Ouch! Get off!" She had stepped on a grave. "Oh, I'm sorry, chick," exclaimed Helga, but wherever she seemed to tread, insulted the notion of resting in peace. "Oof! That was my stomach. Ah! Ah! Oi! How rude! Get off my wife! I can't stay here. It's mad as a cattery." By this point she had reached the end of the graveyard, which was home to a grand gate, and statued by its sizable lock was Beetlebart, raking leaves off the sloping path. Presuming he was something of a gatekeeper, Helga puffed out her equally sizable chest and marched high-elbowed towards him. "Now you listen here, you weaselly, trumped-up little ginger gibbon. I'm a busy woman with things to do. Now open this gate." Beetlebart didn't look up and replied matter-of-factly, "As I say, Miss Dune, you're free to come and go as you like. No one's keeping you here. It's just some prefer it, you know. Well, prefer it I don't. Now, open it. You can walk through it as it happens. Give it a try." With these words, she confronted the solid gate and slowly penetrated her shaking hand that glided through as if it were air. "In all my days, would you look at that? You come again now, Miss Dune. We do bingo on Sundays. I hate bingo." With a held breath, she walked through to the other side, and there laid a sight she had rarely seen. An early ducklington, the hours young, infantile, and so very still, the yellow lamplights peaceful in the dawn as she set off through the town. Her tattered wedding dress dragged like veils of smoke over the cobbles, a vision in white, a vision of sorrow. There was no debate in where to go next. She knew exactly where she was heading, and after a few quiet streets, her haunt appeared before her, the Pig and Truffle pub, all locked up in the dark dingle. Sailing by the outside beer garden and through the sturdy doors, all about was covered in shadow as she moved behind the bar, unable to see the full extent of the mess left over from the wake. But then, in that moment, her helpless state quickly turned irate. "That stupid girl, she's done it again," said Helga, eyeing 30 wine glasses bundled together under the bar. "I told her at least 4 times, when they come out the washer, the wine glasses go on the rack. Is she stupid, thick? How many times do I have to tell her before it sinks into her stupid little head? And the bar is sticky. I can see it's sticky from here, and swept up. Bollocks as she's swept up. There's bits everywhere." Helga then took a deep breath with her eyes closed. "And I bet she hasn't cleaned the pump tapes. Maybe I'm being harsh. I should give her the benefit of the doubt. After all, I did show her not long ago, and I said very clearly to her, every night they need to be wiped down, or the build-up will cause them to rust. I told her that." Slowly, she looked under the bar and came up again even slower. "Brainless. She's brainless. Calm down. Nothing to be done." Glum with a touch of fear, she began the ascent up the guilt-ridden stairs, the same stairs where she had tumbled into a lifeless state. Her finding the place, and upon the summit she glided along the landing to their bedroom. The door was ajar, and the window was open, allowing the wind to ripple the curtains. When she saw Egbert, still in his mourning clothes, asleep in her immense bed dip, she straightened up, cold. "Don't cry, Helga," she said to herself. "I haven't cried in 22 years, and I'm not about to start now. I'll thump you if you cry." Tragically, she knelt down beside the side, draping her enormous mass over Egbert's short legs. "Oh, darling, what has become of me? I wish I could kiss you, hold you. Can I hold you? Can I hold anything?" And in that dark room, all through the night, Helga tried every possible ploy to disturb, touch, and titillate the realm of the living. She tried hugging him, kissing him, shouting at him. She tried knocking over a vase, writing on the window. All failures except for one. She discovered that if she blew on the nape of Egbert's neck, he stirred slightly, as if feeling a chill. In time, Helga tried to fall asleep lying beside him, but to her torment, sleep was out of the question. Chapter 4. The Reading of the Will. The next morning, late morning, Egbert was roused from his sad slumber by a ringing telephone, and in the time it took to crawl out of bed, it had rung no less than 12 times, and with rings that seemed to grow ever more shrill with every attempt. Receiver raided, a husky throat. "Whoever this is, I want you to know you woke me from a very bad dream, so I like you very much." Egbert's reflexes pulled the phone away from his ear as an angry voice berated him with many rude words, including the really bad one. It was Helga's sister, Bianca, who was waiting at the solicitor's office. She explained in very colourful language that it was impossible for the will to be read out without him being present, and could he please arrive as soon as possible. She then thought it necessary to add that if he didn't do so in a timely fashion, she would stamp on him like the ugly rodent he was. Making Egbert flinch, the phone was hung up with a slam, and being the sort of man who took a great concern with grievous bodily harm, he was filled with an inner rush to get there, for fear of being flattened. The weather on this day couldn't have been more contrasted. A bright yellow setting embraced a worried Egbert, who fled the pub with a locking key in the same sweaty, damp funeral clothes he had worn the day before. He struck quite the sight, trudging down the autumn lanes, the very vision of Edgar Allan Poe, his eyes grey and baggy, his thin hair untamed. He was, in a word, haunted, quite literally so, for marching by his side was Helga, dragging the hem of her wedding dress and gesturing wildly. "I didn't ask her to come. I hate her, and she knows I hate her. She's a nasty piece of work, and she always has been, even when we were children." The tortured pair finally reached a grim building on the corner, its hanging sign, old, rusted, and written in gilded letters, Flintwick, accountant, solicitor, and undertaker. Upon Egbert's footfalls, the front door opened with a creak. Before them lay a corridor, and at its end a black door branded as main office, that swung to reveal 3 stark figures separated by a large and imposing desk. In front was Bianca and her Neanderthal of a husband, and opposite a man who looked similar to an old wizened owl, his cold legal eyes magnified behind large spectacles.
"That's him, that's the little rat,"
said Bianca, turning a sharp head to Egbert.
"Seat yourself, Mr. Wells,"
said the owl. As a meek Egbert claimed a far seat, a fuming Helga marched face-way to Bianca. "I haven't seen you in 7 years, and now you're here rubbing your hands together. Typical. My God, you've aged. You look like a tomato that's been left in the sun. You look like old leather handbag. You look like a—" Bang! A big book being dropped on the desk silenced Helga as the reading proceeded.
"The last will and testament of Helga Dune is as follows."
The owl parted the pages with a lick of his finger.
"I, Miss Helga Dune, of sound body and mind, signed in print, signed in signature, code number 02372, hereby leave my assets to the following: my CD of Greatest Summer Club Anthems to a Mrs. Clements, who now lives in Brisbane, Australia, an old school chum, I should imagine. To the 5 members of the Ducklington darts team, the Ducklington Bottoms, I leave £2,000 to be distributed equally among the members."
Bianca scowled impatiently.
"I don't care about this. Get to us. Who gets the pub? Worth a few bob, that."
Looking over his spectacles, the owl licked his withered finger again and turned the page very, very slowly.
"If you insist. I, Miss Helga Dune, leave the freehold of the Pig and Truffle pub and all its inventory to a Mr. Egbert Wells."
Bianca and her husband both stood up in a boiling rage.
"But they weren't even married. I'm her actual sister. Does that count for nothing?"
"You're not my sister. You're a mistake," fumed Helga, with a mixture of hate and resentful love. The owl raised a calm hand for silence.
"You are not neglected from those mentioned if you would care to listen. I also leave the gold bracelet that my mother gave me on my 18th birthday to my twin sister, Mrs. Bianca Stubbs."
He then handed a dainty gold bracelet to Bianca, who abruptly snatched it from him.
"One poxy bracelet, is that all family gets?"
"You ungrateful cow, all you've ever cared about is money," said Helga, glaring as Bianca passed by her.
"Come on, we're leaving. Waste of my bloody time."
Husband Graham grunted in agreement and followed her out the door, but not before kicking over his chair. As Egbert stayed for the necessary forms, Helga hurried after them and watched from the street as they clambered into a family saloon, revved the engine loudly, and drove off into the distance, with Helga yelling after them, "I won't be coming to yours." Miserable, she just stood there for a little while, but in doing so she looked briefly past where the car had been and saw a red figure in the distance. It was Beetlebart, standing on the other side of the road. He was building, or rather mending, an old brick wall with fresh slurry and bricks. Helga went to meet him. "You again?"
"Oi, indeed, me again, Miss Dune."
Helga put her hands on her wide hips.
"You're a gravedigger and bricklayer? As I say, Beetlebart has many jobs, don't you know? So, there I say now, how are you finding it on this fine day?"
"Being a ghost? It's awful. It's just like being alive, only everyone ignores you. Am I still able to lose weight? I've been trying to lose a stone." Beetlebart did not answer her, but continued to lay the bricks very carefully onto the thick layers of slurry. "You said I have unfinished business. What in bollocking hell does that mean?" frowned Helga. Beetlebart glanced up at her with a crooked yellow smile.
"As I say, it's a matter of asking yourself the right questions. What is unfinished, unfulfilled? And even as I speak, and speak I do, your wee man is going to join the air and start walking. He is walking to seek advice, don't you know? I suggest you follow, and follow quick now."
And with those soft Irish words, it appeared true before her. Egbert emerged out of the office entrance and slugged off down the way. Turning back to Beetlebart, Helga deflated at the sight of a newly made wall, and no Irishman to be seen. Vanished. "I hate it when he does that. If anything, it's just rude," said Helga, setting off after Egbert, huffing and puffing as she went. Chapter 5. Tea at Aunt Polly's. Egbert came to a small terraced house with many green hanging baskets that wept with yellow flowers. The front door had a brass knocker in the shape of a crescent moon, but its duty to knock would go unfulfilled, for the house's occupant had already seen him from the kitchen window and rushed to open the door.
"Eggy!"
exclaimed Aunt Polly, embracing him with her usual hippie scent of sandalwood.
"Come in for a cuppa. You look so tired. Have you been eating enough? I have a flaxseed oil that fixes all things."
Following her short stride, the bohemian decor of jingling chimes and purple walls led fast to the kitchen, where Egbert slumped glumly into a wooden chair and leant heavily on the kitchen table. The tabletop was then claimed by a casual grey cat that leapt up lightly and slinked around him, twitching its nose before sitting at the corner. "Hello, Stormy," moped Egbert. The cat said nothing, because it was a cat, and simply glared at him without blinking.
"There's no sorrow in life that can't be cured with a strong cup of tea," said Aunt Polly, continuing on as she prepared the kettle and cups. "And yesterday did go well, all things considered. Funerals can so often be a breeding ground for mishaps. For everyday issues, it is best to stick with a mild brew. For ambivalent matters, PG tips with plenty of sugar. For the loss of a loved one, only Yorkshire tea will suffice. And last but not least, in the event of all-out oblivion, the best of twinings with whisky and cream.
Upon the wipe of a tea tray, Aunt Polly smelt a reek in the air and quickly assigned Egbert's sweaty clothes as the culprit, but opted not to mention it, for her mission, as she saw it, was to build back his confidence. Then, heralding the arrival of kings, the kettle began to whistle loudly as Helga, in her vast enormity, floated down through the ceiling. I really shouldn't go looking about. It's not right, but surely one benefit of being a ghost is the odd snoop. I regret the bedroom, though, a woman of her age owning a thing like that. Filthy mare. Once seen, never forgotten. Helga drifted through the kitchen furniture to stand behind Egbert, and couldn't help but smile, for one great woe in her life was bumping into everything, due to the width of her hips. There was a sudden knock at the door, but not just any casual knock. It was very specific. Perhaps it was a secret knock.
"Oh, that will be the postie. Excuse me, dear," said Aunt Polly, leaving for the door.
As the opening latch signalled to Egbert's ears, it was preceded by a manly mass of baritone growls, as Polly was wrestled into view by a grey-haired postman with impressive sideburns. "Oh, my naughty little gnome, I've been thinking about you all week, even when my wife was cooking my favourite lamb stew. I was thinking of you."
"Company? I have company!"
exclaimed Aunt Polly, flattening down her floral skirt. The postman abruptly straightened up, with blinking eyes. "Well now, it's getting interesting," grinned Helga, enjoying the drama. Respectfully taking his hat off, the postman grumbled forward. "Egbert, lad, how are you? It was a lovely funeral yesterday, wasn't it? As funerals go, that is. I said it last night, and I'll say it again. There was, and will never be, a better pub landlord than Helga Dune." "Oh, that's nice," said Helga, folding her arms proudly. "And to find her at the bottom of the stairs must have been awful. I can't imagine how you must have felt in that moment. But the sun will rise again, lad. You can take an old man's word for it. You know what you need to do?" said the postman, pulling out a chair for himself. "You need to run a comb through your hair and get back out there. That's how you deal with grief. Pull up your socks, get your rod back in your hand and go fishing, and also splash some cologne while you're at it, because you stink to high heaven, lad. I'm nothing but honest." To Helga's spirited guile, these casual words of Egbert moving on were very hurtful. She had not yet considered the inevitable truth and sat down beside him. "I wish you could hear me, Egbert. I wish you could see me as I see you," said Helga, leaning in and gently blowing under his ear, only to watch him slap his neck as if killing a mosquito. Helga then sensed a pair of yellow eyes looking at her. It was the cat, admiring them with a wave of its tail. She thought to sway a little to see if its eyes would follow her, proving it true. But before she could conduct the experiment, the cat was frightened off the table by someone stomping down the stairs and clattering about the hallway. A tall, lanky plumber wearing blue overalls appeared by the kitchen door.
"Evening all. Polly, the sink's all fixed now, but I'll need to pop home and get me wire rob for the bath." "Thank you,"
said Aunt Polly bluntly. The plumber then exchanged a polite but awkward look with the postman, suggesting that they knew each other intimately in some ways, but not in others. "I was just saying to Egbert he needs to get back out there, back on his horse and ride with or without a saddle," said the postman, slurping his tea. The blue plumber looked at Egbert.
"No, he doesn't need to do that. Busy yourself with work, Egbert. Distract yourself. That's how I got over the family dog dying. I said to myself, with every drain, toilet and sink I unclog, I move a step closer to acceptance. Acceptance that Bruno has truly gone to a better place. A dog place. Dog heaven. With dog angels and dog Jesus and...
The blue plumber then burst into tears and left through the front door in a bundle of woes.
And also, said Aunt Polly, unfazed, there is no better woe-begone than exercise. I'm partial to the pogo myself. It works wonders for one's waistline.
Aunt Polly then proceeded to jump up and down around the kitchen. Feeling more down than ever, Egbert put his head in his hands. "Oh, darling, I hate seeing you like this. It's killing me. I'd rather eat glass, burnt ash. I'd even eat vegetarian bacon to never see you so low. But maybe there's hope somehow," said Helga, wrapping her girthy arms around him. The postman pondered for a moment, scratching his large chin, and then spoke slowly and carefully. "You just have to battle on, lad, like a soldier does, and as a God-fearing man, I have no doubt that Helga is looking down on us right now, saying, 'Pull yourself together, Egbert. You have a life to live. Move on and find someone new.'" "I'm not saying that. I don't know what I'm saying, but definitely not saying that," said Helga, looking down her many chins at her white ripples. Slowly, Egbert raised his head from his hands and stood up. "I think I'll go home now. I'm very tired."
"Now, you're not going to do anything foolish, are you?" said Aunt Polly with a note of concern.
"No, Aunt Polly." And with that, he left the terrace house that seemed so full of life and ambled back to the Pig and Truffle pub, his home, his livelihood, his tomb of remembrance. Helga, in her faded wedding dress, could think of no other option but to follow him. It seemed a much better plan than joining the graveyard, which felt more like giving up than anything else. Chapter 6. The Pig and Truffle. The Pig, as it was known, was for many in the town of Ducklington a social necessity, a healing place to drink, laugh, and forget their worldly qualms. But come Friday night, the busiest night of the week, the Pig was blind, its doors locked, its windows thoroughly curtained, even the letterbox was nailed shut. A crowd began to form outside, but the Pig was not receiving, and nor was its owner within. "Go away, we're closed," cried a despairing Egbert, laying on the littered floor behind the bar, looking like a soaked sponge, a new low. He was still in his funeral clothes from 3 days hence, and had taken to drinking the stock. Before long, the crowd turned impatient as jeers of derision were chorused outside. "Let us in, Egbert. Just one drink, please." "Cry on your own time." "Oh, give over and leave him be. I've been a paying customer for 5 long years. How dare he turn me away?" "I think he pushed her down the stairs. Murderer!" "No, Egbert, he was buying milk. I saw him." "Hey, Egbert, sorry about the murderer thing I said." But for all high emotion that was running rampant outside, it was nothing compared to the terrible tirade of Helga, who was pacing among the tables. "You ungrateful beggars! All my life I was there for you, all of you, a shoulder to cry on. I kept all your secrets. I was there and cared, and now you've turned on my Egbert. I ought to bar the whole bloody lot of you." Ghoulish in bridal white against the darkness of the pub, Helga sailed behind the bar and joined Egbert on the floor. "You could let them in, Egbert," she said. "At least then you wouldn't be alone, and they are paying customers. I don't want this place to go down the drain. I've been told I have unfinished business, but I can't think what it is. It can't be to make up with my sister. I don't want to make up with my sister. I don't want to forget her badness. Is that a word, badness? I don't care if it isn't. I love you and I'm angry at you. You're drinking the stock. Rule 1 of running a pub. Never drinking the stock. You need to stop. You have to manage this place on your own now. You have to manage. Stop, stop. But Egbert did not stop, and in the days that followed he drank himself numb from morning till night, only stopping to sleep, scratch and cry in the cavernous pig. On the 4th day, Egbert became oddly animated in a worrying way, looking up at the wooden beams to examine their strength, admiring the kitchen appliances and bending the metal prongs of a virginal fork and whispering wingman promises of an electric night. Upon the 5th day, Helga finally snapped. "This, all of this, I can't take it any more." She fled through the barricaded doors into the bright beams of the outer world, and fled further still over the cobbles, and only stopped upon reaching a small park, and sauntered to a wooden bench, and there, sitting down, surrounded by an orange autumn, Helga finally cried. And for ones that never cry, their eventual tears rain through the years, a playground haze, little Helga in braids, her mother's demise, the size of her thighs, all times to cry came at once, an inconsolable bride. Then, abruptly, the ghosts of 2 old men approached her. They were wearing fancy silk pyjamas and clutching each other indignantly. "She's sitting on our bench." "Yes, our bench." "Can you believe it, Nuke?" "That I can't, Beecham." "The audacity, the nerve!" Helga looked up at them with tears in her spirited eyes as Nuke sat down beside her. "Oh dear, she's crying, poor thing." "Crocodile tears, if I ever saw them." "Oh, Beecham, don't be heartless." "I'm not heartless. I'm simply mindful," said Beecham, sitting down on the opposite side. "Allow me to introduce ourselves. This is Nuke, and I'm Beecham, the handsome one." Helga didn't respond, but continued to cry. "Oh, cheer up, dearie. Did you die on your wedding day? Was it a heart attack?" "No, nor was it my wedding day," wept Helga. "Was it not?" "No, Oh, it's a bit embarrassing." Now, you tell Nuke and Beecham all about it. It can't possibly be any more embarrassing than how we toddled off," said Beecham. Helga mopped her runny nose with one of her white ruffles and began very slowly. "Well, one of my barmaids told me that Egbert, my Egbert, had bought a ring and was planning to propose. I was so excited. Once he was out, I went upstairs to try on my mother's old wedding dress. I was determined to fit, but it didn't fit, and then I tried to take it off, but one of the hooks got stuck, and then I couldn't breathe, and I was scared, and then I ran for the scissors and fell down the stairs, and I'm stupid and fat, and now I'm here." Helga broke down yet again into her sorrowful palms. "Well, if I may say so," said Nuke, "I think that's a fabulous death, to die in a wedding dress, the very symbol of purity. Paint me envious, lucky ducky." "Lucky?" said Helga, dismayed. Beecham folded his arms with sass on the other side. "Oh, absolutely. Some of us have to walk around flat as a pancake. Why, only the other day we were strolling past the town hall and encountered the poor soul of a window cleaner. He was allergic to the bee sting, swollen from head to toe, and the fall from the ladder gave him a look of obtusity. He ruined a perfectly good morning walk with his grotesque appearance. He's not around any more, thank heavens. He apologized to the bee." "You will have to forgive Beecham. He has the sympathy of someone who isn't very sympathetic, said Nuke, continuing. Would you like to know how we shuffled off? What's the point of asking her, if you're just going to tell her anyway? He loves telling strangers how it happened. It's quite morbid, said Beecham. Helga wiped away the last of her tears. Was it suffocation? Close, but not quite. I'll tell you. Shall I tell her? I'll tell her. It was an accidental overdose, said Nuke, grinning greatly from ear to ear. Why are you smiling? Why is he smiling? Said Helga, turning to Beecham. Oh, he's ridiculous. He thinks it's glamorous. It is glamorous, said Nuke. All the great stars died of an accidental overdose. It strikes the chimes of old Hollywood, of flowing gowns, of golden cigarettes. Why, it's positively Munro. Beecham glared over at Nuke. There was nothing glamorous about our demise. You see, dear bride, both myself and Nuke suffer, or rather, I should say, suffered terribly from insomnia. Our chemist was sympathetic to our plight and supplied us with a good amount of lunesta. But then, out of nowhere, he rose his prices to near extortion. Our arrangement had become unaffordable for 2 doses a day. We could, however, afford 1 dose for 1 person, and we did attempt alternation for a time. Nuke would be in blissful slumber, while I remained wide-eyed till dawn, and the next night we would switch. But this proved impractical, and almost caused us to separate, so in a desperate effort to sleep in unison, we looked elsewhere for our beloved lunesta, and came by a small drug wholesaler in the Netherlands, who said we could purchase both batches for half the price, and our first order was lovely, wasn't it, Nuke? Nuke nodded primly as Beecham continued. No complaints at all. It worked exactly the same. We had solved our dilemma. So come the second order, we took our dose without a care in the world, for we had established trust in their competency, and by the time I reread the word lunaron, not lunesta, a sedative for silverbacks, it was too late. We were all aboard. The doors had closed, and our affordable ticket to the land and nod turned out to be an express day-saver to kingdom come. Fortunately, we went together, which I'm quite happy about. Oh my, does that count as a compliment? He never compliments me, said Nuke. I do, said Beecham, to Nuke's deflation. When? When have you ever complimented me? 2006. I said you look dapper. Dapper is an observation and can hardly be presumed to be a compliment. Bride, did your man compliment you? Helga smiled to herself. Sometimes he's more likely to leave treats around. If he thinks I'll like something, and he's always right, he knows me, and he has the most adorable little moustache. A tall, strapping hunk of a man, said Nuke enthusiastically. Oh no, the opposite. He's wonderfully short, perfect for cuddling. His skin is pale like china. His eyes are deep and soulful. And he's a good man, honest and hard-working. Before Helga could say any more, Beecham pointed to the edge of the park. Like that man there? Helga's eye-line looked to the distance. Egbert was hurrying down the street very quickly indeed. Oh no, where's he going now? Well, there is nothing down there except the train station, said Beecham, checking his nails casually. Helga thought for a moment, then her face flashed with worry as she flustered to a stand and set off after Egbert as fast as she could. Chapter 7. The Station. The wind howled through the lonely station, its sparse company only 3 locomotives a day, one of which was a fast freight train, a non-stopper, and there awaiting the one that does not stop was Egbert, standing on the platform with a sigh. I wait, It comes and I wait. It will be late with my luck, he said morosely. At that moment, an out-of-breath Helga appeared large in white up the station steps. "Don't do it, Egbert. Don't kill yourself. Wait. Perhaps I'm jumping to conclusions. Maybe he intends to get on the train, to get away, to travel." "I'm going to kill myself," cried Egbert with a slur. He had finished a bottle of gin. "Well, that answers that question," fumed Helga, arms akimbo. The unhelpful wind ruffled Egbert's coat dramatically. "I don't want to live any more without my Helga. She was my world. Without her, my life is nothing. Why did you leave me, Helga?" "I didn't leave you. I died. There's a difference. I'm here. Look at me, Egbert. I'm standing right here." Helga then felt a tremendous sense of guilt building up inside her, but couldn't think why. It was only upon searching her feelings that she came by a black box labelled "Do It." Inside was the notion that Egbert should throw himself in front of a moving train. At least then they could be together. But thinking further, Helga revolted and threw the box asunder for optimism. "Live, my darling. You're still young. There is still joy to be had. You could be—" Interrupting her passionate plead, the shrill whistle of the freight train sounded off in the distance, its winking yellow light growing larger with every second. "Here we go, then," said Egbert, buttoning up his coat. The train whistled again, now hurtling close enough to smell its steely drive, its railing right of way that does not stop. Egbert shuffled his short height to the edge of the platform and looked again at the train, and in that moment he couldn't help but frown. Something was odd about the train. It was starting to slow down, and then, as a cool breeze flurried through his greasy hair, he smelt a strong scent of sandalwood in the air, followed by a friendly voice.
"Eggy, what you doing here?"
He turned around, soft with a gin burp. It was Aunt Polly, dressed to impress with a brooch made of onyx. Before Egbert could think what to say, the un-eyed train pulled into the station. It was not the fast freight at all, but rather very late cross-country to Crewe. Soon, with a ding-ding, the train doors opened, and a handful of passengers departed onto the platform. Among them was a tall, proud, elderly woman carrying a large suitcase. Her nose was beaked. She was dressed impressively in emerald green, and her heels clip-clapped loudly through the station. As soon as Aunt Polly saw her, she cried out excitedly, "Over here, Madam Boldly. I'm so delighted you've come to stay, and on such short notice." The green woman loomed between them and placed her spindly hand on Aunt Polly's shoulder. "And I with you, dear friend," said Madam Boldly in a deep female voice. "The countryside accepts me as one of its own. The smell of manure in the air is a good omen, but my presence here was very much unforeseen. I was at home in London, watering my geraniums, when I suddenly felt an overwhelming compulsion to visit my old friend Polly, and 3 trains later, here I am in all my complexities. Indeed, there is a strangeness about. Well, I'm delighted you've come to visit. A good catch-up is well overdue. Oh, this is my nephew Egbert," said Aunt Polly, pointing him out. Madam Boldly looked down at him and gave a small gasp, her green eyes full of concern. "His aura is apricot. How peculiar it is. He is haunted by his past, and haunted still," she said, picking a small magnifying glass from a chain around her neck and inspecting him closely. although Capricorns often are at this time of year," she added. Aunt Polly joined the examination.
"He also whiffs a bit. Sorry about that."
Madame Boldly then postured with an air of satisfaction. "The smelling and the haunting are fine by me, as long as they can carry a suitcase." Egbert was then burdened with the heavy luggage, as Boldly outstretched a bangled arm. "Lead on, dear Polly, lead on, and we shall follow with great diligence." And with that, Aunt Polly and the Green Lady started off towards the station exit, and Egbert, sobering under the weight, tramped after them like a miserable Sherpa. But he was glad to be leaving the station. A relieved Helga, meanwhile, remained as the train blew its whistle to leave. "All aboard!" Was that an Irish brogue? To her far-sighted surprise, it was Beetlebart, dressed as a train conductor at the end of the platform and waving a paddle to depart. Bullish, Helga hitched her hem and marched sternly towards him, a march that quickly escalated to an exhausted run as the train began to move. "What are you going to be next? A chuffing milkman? What is my unfinished business? I know you know. Please just tell me." When there was no more platform left to run, she waited as the seconds passed, the red-headed Beetlebart being carried further and further away into the distance, his yellow smile beaming at her from the driver's seat window. And then, at the last, he adjusted his red neckerchief and called back to her. "Oi, gal, it's staring your plane. 'Tis to walk the aisle. Be quick now, be quick." And then, before Helga's widening gaze, the train snaked its way through the autumn countryside, vanishing amongst the fields. Chapter 8. Séance. Panting with the weight of Boldly's case, Egbert followed them back to the terrace, but upon his second visit the house was altered somewhat. Aunt Polly had let her mystic side flare for Madame Boldly. There was an elaborate wind chime of the solar system by the front door, and inside a great symphony of incense attacked the nostrils with a sharp, dusty scent, which was so overpowering that even Egbert's odour could not be detected, as well as strange ambient music playing in every room and colourful crystals hanging here and there. "Yes, the chakras are aligned," said Madame Boldly. "There is good energy here. It reminds me of a Bali temple I attended." Aunt Polly was so elated by the good review that she hardly noticed an exhausted Egbert collapsing to the floor. "I'll put the kettle on, shall I, and make us some tea?" she said. "Is it made from the bark of the Walla Wally tree?" asked Boldly, continuing. "It's native only to the mountains of Calcutta." "No, I don't have that, I'm afraid. I've got green tea." "Well, it will have to do. Where will I be laying slumber tonight?" "In the guest bedroom next to mine." "Delightful, and no doubt it will be a clean and well-ventilated affair. I trust your nephew knows the way." Madame Boldly looked primly down at carpet-bound Egbert as Aunt Polly mirrored the mood of her guest. "Of course he does. Come along, Egbert. Stop messing about on the floor and be accommodating." Still somewhat drunk, he regained himself with an angry groan and manhandled the big heavy suitcase along the way and up the stairs, the very steep kind you get in terraced houses, closely followed by Boldly. "Come on, lift with your knees, boy. I haven't got all day." Now utterly spent, Egbert tripped through the landing and into the spare bedroom. "Sufficient," said Boldly, inspecting the room. "Place the trunk at the foot of the bed. It's bad luck to have it anywhere else. And now you may go." Dog-eyed in silent despair, Egbert slinked his way out of the room. "What a pathetic little man," she said, turning to a near dressing table and unpacking her toiletries. It was then that Helga's moody, veiled head materialized upwards out of the floor. "How dare you call my Egbert pathetic? He's in pain, and yes, he's little, but he can't help that, just as you can't help being an ugly, old, wrinkly, patronizing—" As Helga went on berating from the floor, Madame Boldly began to act rather strangely. Her hands started to shake all about the dressing-table. Her eyes moved wildly as she turned to look about the room. Holding a single arm outstretched, her fingers clawed like an eagle's talon. In an instant, she looked down to the vicinity of Helga's head. "There is an ectocompilius," gasped Boldly, continuing. "The temperature knows. It knows." From Helga's point of view, Madame Boldly's acknowledgment of her was difficult to quantify. She seemed to be aware of her presence, but lacked the full-bloomed vision of Beetlebart. "Show yourself, spectre. I'm not afraid of the past or passing. I smell you still. I smell cheese and onion crisps." "Cheese and flipping onion crisps," fumed Helga, floating up fully into the room. "Oh," moaned Madame Boldly, backing into the dressing-table to the tune of clinking perfume bottles. "Your aura is large, larger than any human's could be. Perchance a stable stood here?" Helga looked herself up and down, feeling self-conscious and then infuriated. "You're asking for a kick in the fanny, you are. It's not easy to lose weight, you know. I've tried all the diets, all the different types of foods, and I struggle, okay? I've tried the caveman diet, replacement meal shakes, the counting calories thing. I've tried night walks, morning walks, half portions, smaller plates, chewing longer, home exercise and ankle weights. I'm trying, okay?" The climbing unrest of Helga began to show in Madame Boldly, as if they were somehow connected by emotion. Eventually, the lambasted Boldly gave an almighty cry and fled out of the room down the stairs in a great fluster. "Polly, my dear old friend," she said, catching her breath, "I regret to inform you that you have an evil spirit in your house, and a large one at that." Egbert and Aunt Polly were both sat at the kitchen table, clasping mugs of tea and unsure of how to respond to the news. "Oh, right. Sorry. I can light some more incense if you like. I've got one called Midnight Moon that's very good for sleeping." "I'm afraid it's a little more serious than that. I smelt cheese and onion crisps." "I don't keep crisps. Carbs are my mortal enemy," said Aunt Polly defensively. "No, you misunderstand me," said Boldly. "The scent of cheese and onion crisps is my own earthy response. It tells me that there is a spirit trapped betwixt two havens, unable to pass over. It seeks resolution, and if not obtained, it will remain in your home forever." Now worried, Aunt Polly stood up from her chair and nervously fingered her buttonholes. "I can't have that. I'm getting this house revalued soon, and what about my retirement? I might want to downsize. I can't sell my house with a ghost." Egbert remained in muted melancholy, quietly drinking his tea, as the two frail ladies took to resolve the matter. "Well, there is nothing for it. We will have to perform a white cradle, otherwise known as a séance. We shall seek to communicate with this vexed apparition." "Oh, how exciting! Shall I light some candles?" "Yes, dear Polly, as many as you can, and close the curtains. We must create a womb of safety for the spirit, or else they will not extend the void." Before long, the quaint kitchen was transformed into something close to a gypsy tarot tent, lit only by candlelight and the 3 flickering faces of Polly, Boldly, and a gloomy Egbert, all holding hands around the kitchen table. Madame Boldly gave an official clearing of her throat and began with great severity. Communicating with the other side is a very precious matter. Like balancing a pencil on your nose, it requires absolute concentration, even the slightest disturbance, and the tie is severed. Drawing a deep breath, she closed her eyes and started humming like a Shaolin monk. Om. The living are willing. We wait patiently. If any spirits are among us, use me as your vessel. At that moment, a troubled Helga descended through the ceiling once again and glided down onto the dishwasher. I hope she knows that cat of hers is on the roof, although it looks quite content, so it must do it a lot. With opening eyes, Madame Boldly's nostrils began to flare with the tang of cheese and onions. The spirit is close. It is aware of our presence. Seek to make contact, wandering spirit. We are here. We are waiting. Drifting off the washer, Helga approached the table, very unconvinced. Hello, can anyone hear me? Boldly gave a notable shudder. I feel its vastness once more, so large, perhaps it is not human. Moo! I am not a cow, you stupid daft bat. I'm Helga Dune. She moved even closer to Boldly's ear and spoke as clearly as she could, as if she was talking to somebody hard of hearing. Helga! 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 Boldly gave a great gasp and barked the word. Helter-skelter! No, try again. Helga! Hotel! Helga! Helga! Helicopter! Helga! Helligan! Helga! Helga! Droned an exhausted Madame Boldly, flopping forward onto the tabletop as Egbert shot bolt upright in his chair. Helga? Helga, is that you? Yes, my darling, it's me. I'm here, cried Helga, looking at him lovingly from across the table. Groaning, Madame Boldly lifted her grey expression off the table to the concern of Aunt Polly. Heavens, are you all right? I am well enough, said Boldly. The connection is strong, but for how long I do not know. Speak through me, spirit, quickly. I am ready. Speak, Helga. Tell my Egbert I love him. What is Egbert? I'm Egbert, said Egbert. She says she loves you. Egbert immediately jumped up in a wave of euphoria. Tell her I'm here. She hears you. She feels you. Such love, such pain. I miss you so much, bleated Egbert, his eyes twinkling through newborn tears. I miss you more, howled Helga, her soul aching, her arms outstretched. Madame Boldly's whole body began to shake. The connection is fading. Speak your last, boy. Speak quickly. Helga, will you marry me? Cried Egbert to the shadows all about him. Yes, 1,000 times yes, replied Helga passionately. Yes, groaned Boldly, looking close to passing out entirely. Helga jumped up and down, overcome with emotion. "Tonight, my love, St. James' Church, midnight. When the clock strikes 12, St. James, St. James." Madame Boldly fell back on her chair as the candles went out all at once. Leaping to the light switch, Aunt Polly flicked it on, killing the spooky atmosphere, but despite the light, the mood of the room remained the same. "I'm getting married to Helga tonight," grinned Egbert, nodding to himself in a deep delirium. "Yes, dear boy, I foresee it clearly, and the strike of midnight is scarcely 7 hours away. But to arrange a simple ceremony in that time should not be a problem." Upon these words, Aunt Polly sported a look of grave apprehension.
"Wait, hold on a minute. This is just a bit of fun, isn't it? You don't really mean to go to St. James's at midnight? That would be silly, and it's cold tonight."
Madame Boldly moved towards her, tall and intimidating. "Did I hear that correctly, that you think it silly and a bit of fun? These, dear Polly, are the words of one who is cold and shut off from their third eye. Perhaps you are not as spiritual as I previously thought. Your aura once appeared to me as aquamarine, but now I see it has changed to cynical citron."
"I am not citron. I'm as spiritual as they come," said Aunt Polly.
Madame Boldly then took her by the hand and clapped it tightly. "Then believe, dear friend, for your nephew needs your help. He needs you to believe." Aunt Polly glanced over at Egbert as he looked back at her with weak, steepled eyes, and his small lips pulled back over his teeth.
"All right," she said, determined. "But how on earth are we going to convince people to attend?"
Madame Boldly raised her proud beak. "Don't worry about that. I can be extremely persuasive." And so, with time on their side, with belief in their hearts, all three prepared for the arrival of 12 and the eerie wedding to come. Chapter 9. Wedding Bells. As you would expect, the task of drumming up attendance for a wedding of one proved extraordinarily difficult, but despite all common sense, a gathering began to form outside St. James's Church. Some were moved by Madame Boldly's telling of the engagement, others saw it as an act of healing for Egbert, but the overwhelming majority attended out of morbid curiosity. The handbells chimed in the night. The long hand moved to near midnight, 11:30 by the clock. Boldly stood tall amongst the mob, ever persuading, ever rejoicing, ever disparaging doubt. Approaching up the way in a wad of nerves, the groom drew nearer to the church, an encouraging Aunt Polly by his side.
"Be brave, Egbert."
Looking his best, he had been thoroughly washed. His hair was slick, his moustache was combed, and he was wearing an oddly fitting wedding suit, assembled from various neighbours. As the mass slowly parted to let him through, the many faces stared down at him in a catalogue of emotions, including pity, bemusement, sadness, and glee. Then the imposing black doors of St. James's Church were flung open by an outraged vicar, the same imperious vicar who had conducted Helga's funeral only a few days prior.
"By merciful God, do you have any idea what time it is? Begone, all of you."
Madame Boldly pulled Egbert to the front of the crowd and explained with great projection. "Fate has spoken. The universe concurs. We have all come together that Egbert may elope with the spirit of Helga Dune. To stop this ceremony now would be an act against love, against hope. Take us inside, light the candles, and marry these two souls separated by an unsailable sea. Do it for love, Vicar. Do it for all that is good and wonderful in this world. My Helga is in there. I know that she is, declared Egbert, with love, pain, and nonsensical hope. The vicar remained unconvinced, and more outraged than ever.
You want me to marry off a dead woman? Absolutely not. I will have no part in this unholy display of grave and engagement. The very notion is vulgar, not to mention highly illegal. If I may, Vicar, we are referring to the spirit of Helga Dune, not the body of Helga Dune. There would be no digging involved, said Aunt Polly calmly to the vicar. That's even worse. The good book states very clearly, till death do us part. To entertain the notion of anything beyond that is simply ridiculous. I will not allow it. Now all of you, begone.
All of a sudden, out of the church doorway came Beetlebart, dressed as a choir boy, who promptly stood next to the vicar and was acknowledged at once.
Who in God's name are you?
Beetlebart did not reply, but simply gave a yellow smile and placed a workman's hand on the vicar's shoulder, causing him to see all that Beetlebart saw, as the whole churchyard revealed its full attendance of hundreds of ghosts waiting alongside the living to attend the wedding. Stuttering all the while, the petrified vicar kept his resolve.
I am not afraid of such revelations. It is to be expected. You forget I am a man of God, and I will still not permit this ridiculous union. And furthermore,
the vicar was then silenced by a powerful voice booming from the crowd, as the ghost of a scowling old man, wielding a cane, stomped forward. Phillips! In an instant, the vicar went white as a golf ball. His hands went clammy, his knees knocked together.
It's my old schoolmaster, Mr. Blackwood.
Phillips, I want a word with you, Phillips. What's this I hear about you standing in the way of true love?
Well, yes, but—
Speak up, Phillips.
It's ridiculous, sir.
Ridiculous, you say? Well now, you listen here. You are going to marry these two lovely people. You are going to do it properly, and you are going to smile while you do it, or so help me God, I will stand you in front of the class and thrash you within an inch of your miserable little life. Have I made myself clear, Phillips?
Yes, sir,
stuttered the vicar. The ghost of old Mr. Blackwood then gave a second almighty roar and charged forward, chasing the vicar into the church, as the crowd all followed suit through the large doors of St. James's. As Egbert reached the chapel's alcove, a smiling Beetlebart was there to greet him.
Hello there, Egbert. I speak on behalf of Helga, and sure, she speaks true. A fine fellow ye be.
It's you from the graveyard, said Egbert. You know my Helga. Is she here with us now?
Aye, Egbert, she is indeed, and waiting in the wabe, as brides do till the moment it's right. Ye come with me now, a best man I shall be for ye. It's all been arranged.
And so the wedding began, with all the old pageantry of an English church, the golden ceilings, the ancient air, the midnight calm, mixed with excited whispers. The living were seated to the left, and the dead on the right. At the end stood the vicar, looking very vain on a shallow platform. Close by was Aunt Polly and Beetlebart, beside a pale Egbert as he looked longingly down the empty aisle. As soon as the organ began to play, courtesy of Madame Boldly, Egbert panicked. "A ring! I don't have a ring!" Beetlebart's big ginger eyebrows went up in a casual sort of way. "Aye, that is troublesome, not having a ring. You sort of need one for this sort of thing. What am I going to do? Now don't you be worrying. I might have a ring about me person. Aye, indeed, it may look familiar." Beetlebart then presented from behind his back the small diamond ring Egbert had tossed into the grave. "Even the smallest of diamonds, Egbert, has survived the weight of the world and become what they are, a diamond. Now, straighten up, why don't you? You're about to be married, man, don't you know?" In an instant the clock struck 12. Beetlebart placed a friendly arm around Egbert, and there, manifested before him in a glorious shimmer, was Helga, moving slowly down the aisle, holding a phantom bouquet of white roses and bridesmaided by 3 little spirits wearing Tudor dresses. Egbert's swooping tears glistened in planet-sized eyes as he squinted the tears off and down his cheeks. The all-seeing sight of Beetlebart appeared to spread over the room. All could see her now, gliding past the pews. There was no feeling of panic or alarm. A calm warmth came over the living, as if the impossible was all perfectly normal. Helga moved close to Egbert, close enough to touch. "Egbert, it's me. Please say you see me," she said with a tear. He just stared at her. He tried to speak, but the words to describe had not been invented.
"Dearly beloved,"
began the vicar in all his drapery,
"we are gathered here tonight to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony. Now, before we continue, it is worth stating that a great deal of the marriage ceremony will not apply in these extraordinary circumstances, but they shall be read out regardless."
The vicar opened his book.
"Helga Dune, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to live together in holy matrimony, to love him, to honour him, to comfort him, and to keep him in sickness and in health, forsaking all others, for as long as you both shall live?"
"Yes, I do," said Helga proudly.
"And you, Egbert Jeremiah Wells, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to live together in holy matrimony, to love her, to honour her, to comfort her, and to keep her in sickness and in health, forsaking all others, for as long as you both shall live?"
Egbert tried to speak. His heart was beating so fast he feared he might collapse. In the end, all he could muster was a manic nod. The vicar looked over his book.
"The words! You must speak the words, Egbert."
Yes, I do. Till the end of time, yes," he cried in a sudden burst of volume that scare-jumped the vicar. "Is it time for the vows? I have my own, if I may," said Helga, beginning to cry wholeheartedly as she tried to hold him but couldn't. "Egbert, there is something I always wanted to say to you when I was alive, but I never did. I've never been very good at showing my true feelings. I always thought you would laugh at me or think I was weak, but I'm going to try and say it now. I've never been the pretty one. I was never the pretty girl at school. I was the big girl at school, and the boys picked on me, and the girls picked on me, and my family never really understood me, and friends. I have made a few good friends in my life, but they all seem to just move away and leave me. But then I met you, and you were so nice, and you made me feel good and beautiful. No one had ever made me feel like that before. I've never wanted to love anyone before you. You have always been my world. Thank you for being so good to me." As Helga's simple words echoed through the church, Egbert could not see through the tears.
"And now for the ring. Repeat after me, Egbert. I give you this ring as a token and pledge of our abiding love."
I give this ring, I give this ring," he repeated, trying his best to slide a ring on a hand made of haze. Helga never looked at the ring, she only looked at him. "It's okay, darling. You keep it for us."
"Now, the last part," said the vicar, with an official nod to both of them. "Will you both join hands? By virtue of the authority vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride."
And as best as they could, they kissed. The ghosts clapped and cheered, the living likewise in joyous celebration. The wedding bells chimed, Madame boldly played the organ louder than ever. Nuke and Beecham could be seen sat at the back, Nuke weeping uncontrollably as both fluttered their silk handkerchiefs. "Stop crying, you're embarrassing me," said Beecham. "It's just so beautiful," cried Nuke, wrapping his arms around Beecham and crying into his collar. And one by one, as the night grew older, the guests slowly got up and gradually moved en masse out of St. James's, leaving the bride and groom standing at the altar. Helga smiled softly. "In case you were wondering, it was me blowing on your neck." Egbert smiled back, even softer and sadder. "I knew it was. I hoped it was. So where from here? Where do we go?" "Invite them back to the pig, my love. Open the doors to them again. They need you, to serve them, to make them laugh, to listen to their problems when they're feeling low, to know them better than anyone. Will you be there?" Of course. And with that, Helga began to fade and disappeared from his earthly eyes and left him with a feeling of peace. Aunt Polly and Madame Boldly approached with care and walked with him out of the church into an auburn dawn. The early sun was peeking ready to rise on a new day. An invisible spirit once again, Helga remained for a few moments, looking about the stained-glass windows, the mosaic floor, until a happy Irish lilt was heard by the door. "Aye, 'twas a fine wedding indeed," said Beetlebart, walking up the aisle towards her. "I must say of all the unfinished business, your chew was one tough toffee, but ye dealt with it grand." "Am I ready? To go, that is?" said Helga weakly. "Aye, it's time. Take a hold, Mrs. Dune." Beetlebart then held out his hand, his palm glowing gloriously. In that moment, Helga thought of Egbert. What if I stayed? "As I say, you're welcome to stay, but why would you now? It's only more suffering, lass." "Because I made a promise, as long as we both shall live." And with that noble sentiment, Beetlebart did not speak again, but instead smiled that yellow autumn smile, turned aside and simply vanished. But in his wake came a festive winter. Egbert deboarded the windows and reopened the Pig and Truffle pub. The bar staff were welcomed back. The town was overjoyed to have their beloved haven well again. It stood bright and alive, the heart of Ducklington, and as she promised, Helga remained, year after year, She slept by his side. She made the rooms colder in the summer-time, and ruffled the curtains on his birthday and whenever Egbert felt low behind the bar after a long, hard day. She would blow on his neck, and he would smile his tired smile, for he knew it was her. For so long Helga prepared for the worst, that he would find someone new, settle down, have children. But Egbert never did. As far as he was concerned, he was happily married to the love of his life, his immortal beloved. Eventually, after 35 years, Egbert retired and sold the pig to an enthusiastic young couple, and Helga loved him still in his old age, feeding ducks on a bench, as he often did in his last remaining years, his moustache white, wearing layer after layer for warmth as he spoke his last words. "You ducks are hungry today, very hungry." Egbert's heart changed its tune then and there. After 83 years, his weak little body fell, cradled into the large ghostly arms of Helga, and the two hands, little and large, that never touch, finally entwined at long last, and with one last look into each other's eyes, they went off into the abyss. What was awaiting, neither knew. But it didn't matter one little bit, for they were together. If heaven exists, that was it for them. The End.